Hi, you guys. My name is Ashley. I am 16 years in recovery, and I teach recovery meetings every Sunday at my tattoo shop here from 7 to 8. I normally do a recap of my meetings every week. The devil's busy because I've tried to make this video a couple times, so apparently he doesn't want me to get it out. So I'm doing this video again because there's something I really want to share with you guys, and I sat down and I wrote it all down so that I could share with you guys without any delays in between. Um, in lieu of recent events that have happened in our community and the fact that we're coming out of Overdose Awareness Month into Suicide Awareness Month, there's something that's really been just weighing on my heart, and I wanted to talk to my community and other communities and just anybody who's willing to listen to this about things to pay attention to. Today, I want to talk about a subject that is painful, complicated, and incredibly important: the relationship between unresolved childhood trauma, addiction, overdose, and suicide. This is not a conversation about blaming parents, blaming victims, or saying that everyone who experiences trauma will develop an addiction or become suicidal. This is a conversation about understanding, because sometimes when we understand why someone is hurting, we can stop asking what's wrong with this person and start asking a much more important question: what happened to this person and what do they need to heal? When we hear the word trauma, we may immediately think about something dramatic: a violent event, abuse, a serious accident, or the death of someone we love. But childhood trauma can take on many forms. They can include abuse, neglect, witnessing violence, having a caregiver with substance use or mental health problems, instability in the home, or having a family member attempt or die by suicide. And trauma isn't always about one terrible event. Sometimes trauma is what happened repeatedly. Sometimes it is what didn't happen. A child may not have been physically abused. Perhaps nobody made them feel safe. Nobody listened, protected them, taught them how to regulate their emotions. Nobody told them what happened to you wasn't your fault. And when a child grows up in an environment where they constantly feel unsafe, rejected, abandoned, or overwhelmed, their developing nervous system can adapt to that environment. The CDC notes that prolonged toxic stress associated with ACEs can affect brain development and stress response systems, and can influence attention, decision-making, learning, and relationships in children. In other words, childhood experiences don't simply disappear because someone turns 18. Sometimes the child grows up physically while emotionally remaining stuck in survival mode. Trauma and the survival response. Imagine a child who grows up constantly waiting for the next argument, the next beating, abandonment, the next drink, the next crisis. Their body learns something: that the world isn't safe. The nervous system becomes highly focused on survival: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Those responses can be useful when danger is actually present. But when the danger disappears and the nervous system never learns that it is safe, a person may continue living as though danger is around every corner. That can contribute to anxiety, depression, emotional dysregulation, difficulty trusting people, shame, relationship problems, and difficulty coping with painful emotions. And this brings us to addiction. Addiction is an attempt to cope. One of the most important things we can understand about addiction is this: people don't necessarily start using drugs because they want to destroy their lives. Sometimes they start because they have found something that temporarily makes life more bearable. A person who feels anxious may discover that alcohol makes them feel calm. Someone who feels emotionally numb may discover that drugs make them feel a little more social. Someone experiencing unbearable emotional pain may discover that a substance allows them to escape their thoughts for a few hours. A lot of people understand that. It's just about the escape, the numbing, the not feeling, the not thinking about those things. That doesn't make addiction healthy. It doesn't make the substance safe, and it doesn't remove personal responsibility from that person making that decision. But it helps explain the behavior a little bit more to society. The problem is that what begins as a coping mechanism can eventually become a prison. As I said before, it starts out as a decision, or a choice. Somewhere along the way, we forget that we have that. The person uses the substance to escape the pain. The substance creates additional problems. Those problems create more pain. The person uses again, and the cycle becomes stronger each time. The cycle of trauma and addiction. Think about it as a circle. Trauma equals emotional pain, equals substance use, equals temporary relief, equals consequences, equals more emotional pain and more substance use. Eventually, the person may not even be using to feel good. They may be using simply to feel normal or social or just not feel anything at all. They may promise themselves they're going to stop. They may genuinely want to stop. But addiction isn't simply a lack of willpower. It's a complex disorder influenced by biology, environment, mental health, social conditions, trauma, and learned behavior. Where does overdose enter the picture in this with addiction? Now we have to talk about overdose. Overdose is not simply the result of someone not caring. A person with a substance use disorder may have an unpredictable tolerance. They may relapse after a period of abstinence. They may unknowingly consume a substance containing a much more potent drug than expected. They may combine substances. And sometimes, tragically, a person dies. The problem with overdose is we can't really count what's suicidal and what was unintentional from some of these situations. So when we look at overdose prevention, we shouldn't only ask, how do we stop people from using drugs? We should also ask, why did this person need drugs to cope in the first place? Which is something I teach every Sunday in my meetings, is we talk a lot about trauma. We don't really talk about the subject of the drug itself, because it's really about what happened to get that person started, is how we heal that addiction. That doesn't replace immediate overdose prevention. It adds another layer to it. We need both. Suicide and addiction. Now let's talk more on a little bit of a harder subject, like the overdose. This is where the relationship becomes especially important. Suicide and addiction are not the same thing. And an overdose is not automatically a suicide attempt, as I just said. Many overdoses are unintentional. Some are intentional. At the same time, substance use is an established suicide risk factor, and the CDC lists both substance use and current or prior adverse childhood experiences among suicide risk factors. Why might these problems overlap? Everything I just said: trauma, addiction, suicide. Why? Because addiction can create isolation. It can damage relationships. It can create financial problems. It can create legal problems. It can create shame. It can create hopelessness. And when someone already carries unresolved trauma, those circumstances can become overwhelming. The person may begin thinking, I'm a burden. I've ruined everything. Nothing is ever going to change. Nobody would care if I disappeared, which is typical for people who have suicidal ideation. These thoughts are dangerous because they can make a temporary situation feel permanent. It's that impulsive behavior that comes along with alcoholism, addiction, or just childhood trauma in general. The role of shame. There's another piece we cannot ignore. Shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong. That difference matters. A person struggling with addiction may also be carrying childhood beliefs such as, I am not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm broken, worthless, I'm always going to be this way. Addiction can reinforce those beliefs. A relapse can feel like proof, a broken relationship can feel like proof, an overdose, and the person becomes trapped inside a story about themselves. But here's the truth. A person's worst moment is not their identity, you guys. It's not who they are. Addiction is not their identity. Trauma is not their identity. A relapse is not their identity. And suicidal thoughts are not a prophecy about their future. It doesn't have to be that way, you guys. Talking to people brings a lot of healing, a lot of understanding to people. The intergenerational cycle. Now, this is very important. There's another important concept. Trauma can travel through generations, you guys. If it's not talked about and it's not dealt with, and you can't get any healing, it's just going to continue cycle after cycle, generation after generation, from your children to your grandchildren to your great grandchildren, and so on and so forth. These subjects need to be broached. Childhood trauma, family addiction, family mental health, all need to be talked about on a consistent basis. A child grows up around addiction, that child develops trauma, that trauma affects how they cope. They develop their own substance use problems. They may struggle with relationships or parenting. Their children may then be exposed to instability, neglect, substance use, or other adverse experiences. And the cycle continues, as I just said. But there is something extremely important about that cycles. They can be broken. Generational curses and cycles, trauma can all be broken by setting and having conversations that we need to have with our children, our grandchildren, and so on and so forth. The fact that something happened in a generation does not mean it has to continue happening to the next, you guys. Healing one person can affect an entire family, just as that trauma can affect an entire family. It goes both ways. A parent getting sober can change a child's entire childhood. A person learning emotional regulation can parent differently. A person receiving trauma treatment can stop passing certain patterns forward. Recovery can become part of the family story too. Recovery isn't just about addiction, you guys. Recovery is about trauma, things that have happened to you as a child or as an adult, things that need to be talked about, conversations that need to be had again. So what does healing look like? If trauma and addiction are connected, recovery has to involve more than simply removing the substance. Abstinence can be incredibly important. Medication can be important. Counseling can be important. Peer support can be important. But we also have to ask, what pain was the substance helping this person escape? This is why I do my Sunday meetings, because I focus on what got the person to the addiction. What happened? Not what's wrong with them, what happened to them for this to come into their lives and this to be a struggle. If we take away the substance but never address the pain, the person may be left with the same emotional wounds that existed before recovery, you guys. Recovery may involve learning how to tolerate difficult emotions, identity triggers, build healthy relationships, establish boundaries, process grief, challenge shame, regulate the nervous system, ask for help, forgive ourselves, and perhaps more importantly, how to believe that our future can be different from our past and our family's past. What can we do? If we're serious about preventing suicide and overdose, we need to stop looking at these problems as isolated events, things that we keep in the family because we don't want to talk about them, because we don't want other people to learn about them, or because we just don't want to discuss them. We have to look upstream. We have to support children before trauma becomes a lifelong trauma. We have to support families struggling with addiction. We have to make mental health care accessible. We have to reduce the stigma surrounding treatment. We have to teach children emotional regulation and healthy coping skills, you guys. We have to make it easier for people to ask for help before they reach a crisis. And when someone is already struggling, we need to treat them like a human being and not a problem to be discarded. Because the person sitting in front of us may be carrying 20 years of pain that we know nothing about. And nothing's been done about it. The most important message, if you remember only one thing from this lecture, you guys, please remember this. Understanding trauma does not excuse harmful behavior. That's not what I'm saying. That doesn't excuse the person in addiction or excuse them from doing the things that they've done. It just states that we need to start paying more attention to these things on a deeper level. But understanding trauma can help us treat the root of the problem rather than only punishing the symptoms. A person can be responsible for their recovery without being blamed for everything that happened to them or feeling like it was their fault. A person can acknowledge the damage their addiction caused while still believing they deserve a future. And a person who has spent years surviving can learn how to live for the first time. The childhood that hurt them may be a part of their story, but it's not who they are. Addiction can be treated. Trauma can be treated. Relationships can be rebuilt. Families can heal. Those cycles can be broken, people. And suicidal thoughts can pass even when they feel permanent in the moment. There's always a reason to keep someone alive long enough for the next chapter to begin, to show these people there is a better future, to prove to them that their trauma, that their addiction is not their identity, that's not who they are. Those are things they went through, and that they can pull through these things because they're strong enough. There's always a reason to keep sharing these things and helping the family to understand more and talking about these hard subjects, broaching these hard conversations that we don't like to have. I know it's hard, people, and some of these things can be seriously deep and seriously emotional for someone to want to share, but we have to. We have to. So when we encounter someone struggling with addiction, overdose risk, or suicidal thinking, let's not only ask, what is wrong with you? Let's ask, what happened to you? Then let's ask the question that matters even more. What can we do to help? You guys, I am not a licensed therapist. I'm not a licensed doctor. I am not a licensed counselor. I am not licensed anything. Everything I'm sharing with you today is through personal experience alone, or things that I have researched. I myself have had 2 family members pass away to suicide. This was an emotional subject. I tried to make another video, and I finally sat down, as I said, and started to write these things down to share with you, with my community, and with the world, and whoever else wants to listen. I love you guys, and I just wanted you to share these things with you guys, for y'all to understand that a lot of this can be handled in a different way. We can save a lot of our younger lives. We have so many youth and so many people's lives that we're losing to overdose and to suicide. And all of this is because conversations aren't had. We're not talking about the things we need to talk about, you guys. It's time to broach the hard subjects. It's time to have the conversations with your children and grandchildren and family members. It's time to sit down and start doing some healing, you guys. Because like I said earlier, you can continue on with these generational curses. But just like these generational curses, healing can be handed down generation after generation too. I love you guys, and I hope that what I shared today can help somebody. And if you're someone out there struggling, again, I'm not a licensed therapist or a doctor. I don't work for any of these companies. I don't have a 1-800 number to give you. I mean, they're all over the place, I'm sure. But as somebody who teaches healing and who teaches how to regulate your emotions, I want you to know that if you're feeling some kind of way and you're struggling today and you need somebody to talk to, please don't hesitate to direct message me. Don't hesitate to comment under this video. Don't hesitate to call me. My number is on Google. It's Day and Night Ink through my tattoo shop. There is somebody out there willing to help you guys and to listen. And if somebody's struggling with having these conversations and you need some help with that, please reach out. I love you guys. Have a wonderful day.